Thank you for attending the virtual roadshow, and I'm talking to Kanisa Ngandu from Grant Thornton. Kanisa, please share for us some background to Grant Thornton and in particular how you engage with SMMEs.
I think as GT, we have offer variant services or different services to SMMEs. So from a compliance and regulatory space, we have an office in head or quarters, I would call them. They're based in Pretoria, so they can assist SMMEs with anything from registering your employees and determining or assessing what do you need to be registered for from a tax compliance perspective. So that looks at a number of things from employees tax. Do you need to register your employees? Do your employees qualify for any incentives that are currently available in the country? Do you need to register for customs and excise and export if you are in manufacturing or do any specific exporting or importing? Do you need to register for corporate tax? And I think under corporate tax, there's different. So the definition of SMME from a compliance perspective, from a tax perspective, differs depending on which tax we're looking at. So if we're talking about customs and excise, there is no such, they don't have yet a regulatory framework that looks at SMMEs in particular. But from a corporate tax perspective, there's different room where one, if you're an SMME, you can either register as a specific organization. You pay taxes very differently from how you would if you are just registering as a normal business. And from a VAT perspective, there also isn't a specific or different registration framework you would follow as an SMME, but there are different timeframes that you can apply if you're not automatically allocated to that payment period. So, because from a VAT perspective, if you must be VAT registered, you would be required to pay your VAT either on a monthly basis or on a 4-monthly basis or once per annum. But if you are currently registered to pay, let's say on a bi-monthly, but you want to pay once in 4 months, then you would be required to also apply to SARS, to the commissioner, and ask that that registration is amended so that you can pay within whatever framework that fits you. Currently with SMMEs, that is 4 months, but there's just a lot that we can say about that, especially if you're in a VAT input claim position, because then it will mean essentially you've got your funds that you are eligible to that are tied up, and you can only receive them once you submit that you comply with your submissions for that period.
What is your advice for SMMEs who aren't tax compliant? And I'm thinking especially in terms of not losing out on government tenders.
The thing with being compliant with SARS, I think most SMMEs might have experienced during the lockdown when they were now, when the government says we will help you out with the cash flows, but you must be compliant. So I think as much as it can be a negative thing, if you want to trade with big businesses that must be compliant with the laws, then it becomes a block when you're looking about your growth, when you're thinking at your growth as an SMME. So what we are able to do as an organization is we've got a unit that is run by one of our great directors, Eugen Pillay. He runs a number of different funds, and he works with very reputable organizations in South Africa that do want to, make the right impact in society. Through those programs that he's involved in, you can, if you're an SMME that supplies specific goods, you can be in the supplier database of one of the biggest organizations in the country. And that obviously ensures your growth and you've got a reliable customer. And over and above that, working with the different offices, we also look at scaling people up. So there's a number of clients, I don't know, my colleague can brag on about for days, where when he started working with SMME, they were making revenue of X amount. And by connecting them to the sustainable customer that would be willing to pay you in advance as an SMME, especially if you must deliver on certain issues, because we know cash is king, and more so when you're a small business. And as part of that project, they then also look at your entire compliance regulation to ensure that you don't have such things that would block your growth. And we can assist people scale up by increasing the number of, their size or access to market through a number of other GT firms that we've got across Africa and across Europe and just over the world. I think one of the major selling points for GT is globally we are a firm that supports entrepreneurs. So whether I'm talking to one of my colleagues in Germany, his customer base is essentially someone that he's helping from scratch. This is what you need to do, and you need to go enter, also assisting with entrance in different markets and providing the necessary support in that market if you're new and you're not necessarily willing to set up a whole office and register a company there. Look at different ways of what is the best way then of doing that within that market. So we do currently a lot more for SMMEs than just the compliance part, just helping them grow and growing with them from locally and also looking abroad. Helps you when most people think of tax, they just think of it as compliance. And that's where it ends. But if you understand when, for example, you pay a lot more, whether you're talking about customs or that, then you can build that in your cash flow planning. And similarly, I think the same functionality or tools can be used to analyze and create a greater understanding of your business in other areas, which also does help you in a greater deal. So when you are formulating your strategy growth where and just looking at your cash flow management. I think besides the analytics, there isn't a lot of new developments that would be coming from the private sector from the tax perspective, because I think a lot of the tools that people use for tax, those are well known, and there's been no changes, I think, in those areas. Yeah, I think it's that beginning to end approach that we follow when we're assisting clients. So it would start. We would look at obviously what goods do you want to what do you want to export, and where do you want to take in which countries, and what would be the best system to export that, and advise you on. I think even your different career. I think throughout the experience that we've got, combining the different independent different units, we're then able to say if you want to, so if as an SMME, this might be the best way for you to follow if you want to export, and these are the implications of potential savings that I think most people might not even be aware of, where if you're exporting to a different country, there are certain exemptions. And if you're importing from a specific country, they also ask specific exemptions that would be applicable and things that you need to know and you must comply with to ensure the continuity and sustainability of your business. So I think from beginning to end, from what you need to do, how you need to do it, how ideally your contracts should be structured, and who is the best person to talk to for, I guess, for the shipping of your goods, and also looking at what are the different options with insurance. Are you covered if you're insuring through this route? What does it mean if you're not covered? What are the potential other business costs that could just catch you unawares? And then you find yourself, whatever of most of your load, which would be the core of your business, is damaged for whatever reason, and you don't have the appropriate insurance, then your business could just go under. So we do look at the beginning to end process. So when we're looking at complying with specific legislation, whether it is related to whatever for any business, if we're saying we want to help you scale up and you want to get into Nigeria or in Kenya or Uganda or Australia, in South Africa, we coordinate the engagements with our partners in those different countries. The understanding of the laws and practical requirements that might be generally understood by the authorities there, but might not be clearly written, that those we take those into account in that advice, and it will take all of that into account. So it relies on the local people or local element. The SMMEs that are based abroad, a lot more of them engaging, wanting, especially for services, wanting to provide same services they provide in their base to South Africans. So we've had a lot more inward inquiries regarding importing or exporting services into the country. I think there hasn't been as much take up of that idea that or realization in South Africa that you are no longer limited to provide services to the current market in South Africa. You can, or you never were, but now it has been made so much more easier because everyone is comfortable with this idea of engaging with people you've never met before. So whether we're talking about if you're an SMME or you run your own practice, you do psychology, there's no reason you should only provide that service in South Africa, obviously subject to the other legal laws that will be applicable in the other countries. But just exploring that opportunity to say, what can I do? Whatever I offer in South Africa, can I offer it in the different country? Do I need to be registered there? Under which codes? What is required for me to be registered? So we look at all of that, but again, it has been a lot more coming from other countries, from SMMEs that want to provide services into South Africa. In South Africa, we the assistance has been limited a lot more to SMMEs that sell goods that are looking at selling those same goods in the other markets in South Africa, in Africa in particular. But I think that also has been driven by that opportunity of the Free Continental Trade Agreement, where a number of SMMEs are saying, well, we can grow beyond our current estimated growth by utilizing some of these opportunities. I, No, I was gonna say that I think one of the things that I actually just thought was quite a great opportunity and is exciting for us talking to you was exactly that. That I think there's a gap where SMMEs might find themselves drowning, and there's a lot that they can do outside of South Africa, and you don't have to be an expert yourself on how do you get to do that. That's why then people like us available to say this is how you could achieve that. So I think from a compliance perspective, especially on the SARS side, if you you are now aware, you were not aware that you're not compliant with whatever taxes. SARS is very open to people. In fact, they appreciate that through voluntary disclosure, where you go to them and you say, for this specific period, I was not compliant and I would like to correct that non-compliance. And that is something that most SMMEs, in fact, can do without having to employ. You don't have to engage any specific, if there's no need, you don't have to do that. But I think where the amounts or possible exposure is a little bit significant, I would advise that then in that case, you do consult someone to say, this is what I have discovered, and this is what I've estimated as a potential liability. Because so when you go to SARS and you want to disclose and say, I have not been compliant, one of the things that they ask or they say is that voluntary disclosure has got to be open and truthful. So you must cover everything. So you can't come to them and say, last month I wasn't compliant, but you forget to mention that 2 years ago, there were again 2 months where you were not compliant. Because then whatever agreement you reach with them, it then becomes null and void if they discover that there was a time that you didn't disclose. So depending on that extent, then it's important to then engage a specialist that can look at your matter and then help you engage SARS as well for the best position for everyone. Something that I think the number of advisors, in particular in the tax space, that I think they would that advise businesses and but not entirely legal, if I can put it that way. So if someone says to you as an SMME, I can help you recoup that or get this or of this amount, and perhaps they've got relationships internally at SARS or whatever the case may be, and they would help you get that refund, and you give them a specific percentage, which is something that I think that's called, I forget the correct term for that. But now that is something that again would, if now it comes back later that, well, hang on a minute, this was not entirely right. SARS is not going to go for that advisor as much as there's room legally that they can, but you're the first person of contact because you as the business owner are the one that received these refunds that were not entirely legal. And now you need to pay for those and you also face potential imprisonment. So I would say, again, as an SMME, it's very important to, if someone is going to advise you, you must look them up and check that they are properly registered with SARS as a tax practitioner. So if they're advising you, they know what they're doing. And you also must be rather very, in particular when it comes to that, I think because that is something that we've heard very horrible stories about, then you need to again be a bit careful because you don't want to find yourself in some scheme that defaults us because most people want to make their money clean, not through legal or shady means. Yeah.
Tell me, what sort of company will knock on your door looking for assistance?
We actually don't have a limitation of who can contact us, but what we obviously look at is the customer, being the SMME in this case, would need to be a reliable person. So even if you haven't set up a business yet, but you've got years of experience doing something and you've got an idea that you've put together and you know this is what you want to do, maybe you're looking for someone to assist you formalize that and review your strategies and look at, is this workable? What can you do? That is what that's all that is required. So we also obviously understand. So if you're an SME that is already operational, one of the things that you'll then find would be if you want someone to assist you with your daily, I guess, just management accounts. So we also do help SMMEs capture their payroll and just basic accounting services, and then followed by the compliance. So if you're looking for that specific assistance, then again, then you have a bit more reason to also contact us because it's a lot more cheaper to work with us than bring in an expert in house. So that certainly is one of the main benefits. And we also have access to tools and solutions that most SMMEs would not be able to afford. That again being another added benefit. So you can, I think at any point, if you are confident that you've got a good idea and you know what you're doing, you want someone to help you, we definitely will go through the journey with you. Something that we also do through our financial services group leader is looking at if you want to upscale, that comes with a lot of different requirements. You would need capital to do that. So we actually also do that, not only assisting you to look at what government incentives or government funding is available, but also working with different partners, funding partners, private equity funders, looking at banks. If you've got a great idea or a great business model, then looking at how do we assist you connect with the right people to get you the right capital for you to achieve your growth ambitions. I think one of the latest, just a more recent one, obviously because of the new or changes in legislation, is what I expect should be one of the key growth factors, I guess, for SMMEs in particular in South Africa that want to access the African market. I think the Free Continental Trade Agreement provides a platform for people to do that. And that is something also that we are focusing on to assist SMMEs who want to access this market, given that the growth in South Africa is very limited. There are a lot of incentives that could potentially benefit SMMEs, but that you need to be aware of these. So I would say it doesn't, you must make it your business to know if you are in an industry that does A, B, C, and D, what's available to you. If you don't know, again, it wouldn't cost you as much to engage someone who might know than you not knowing, because then you might continue paying for things you should not be paying for or not having the right access to the market when there is a way to resolve that issue for you at a minimal cost. Something that we didn't talk about that I think is important as SMMEs, and I recall when we had or the last time I was presenting the financial at the what you call finance and a number of SMMEs had actually were pointing this out that they're not aware of this. It's some incentives of operating in a special economic zone. We've got a number of them in the country, a number of them here in Gauteng, which would it minimizes a lot of your compliance related costs. And I think there's a lot of different options then that as an SMME you need to look at. Do you qualify to be in a zone? And if you do, what do you need to be part or to set up your business in that area? So there's just a lot, but all of it links back to you need to know what's available to help you, not only in South Africa, also through the, I guess, the trade agreements, again, that South Africa has with a number of different countries. There are aspects of those agreements that target SMMEs in South Africa. We, in fact, had a recent engagement with an organization from the US that is funded by the US government to fund SMMEs in South Africa, where they are looking at they need to get greater access to SMMEs. I think when it comes to SMME funding and other scaling up options, you've got this problem where you've got people that want to fund that say, I can't find the right people to fund, help me find them. And you've got a lot of SMMEs that say, I can't get funding, I can't get access to the market. So there is then that bridge that needs to be, or the gap that needs to be bridged, where people know where to find each other. And I think in a lot of different ways, we do play a key role in that bridge. Yeah. I think the easiest one is just willingness to change and adapt. So, because a lot of the problems that SMMEs have, you can easily, with the understanding and right exposure, those can be easily addressed if there is that willingness to change and adapt from the SMME owner, where you say, this is perhaps what I know best, but I might not know A, B, C, and D best. And where I've got the right advice, I'm therefore willing to, even if it's about keeping records. If you weren't doing that yesterday, now you know you must do it, then you start doing it. I think those small acts of trying to understand things you don't understand, or trusting people to advise you understand, I think those are some of the key attributes that you find in businesses that either can be turned around even when they're in a dire situation. It's just that willingness to adapt, to be agile, I guess, and adapt to different environments. I know I've had a couple of conversations, some of the deal makers from the IDC, where some of them have said it all goes back to, so you can have an SMME that is doing great. You know, they have got, maybe you already have offices wherever. If you sell goods, you already have a shop where you do sell your goods. But that first time they ask you to send your financial statements, you don't have. Even if you send them later on, they already are very worried, because how do you run a business where you don't keep financial records? And then there's that concern then that, oh, but if we give you money, are you going to keep records? Are you going to understand? Because most SMMEs would then brush that off as a non-factor. Like, but it's very important, because we need to know that you understand the importance of that. And then others, just small things. If you're an SMME, it doesn't mean all the money you make from that business is your money. Some that I've actually had some of my there has to be, that's why the business is a separate legal person, because now if someone is giving you their money, they need to understand that even though this is coming through your bank account, it's not your money, it is for the business. And you do that by showing that understanding through the records you've kept. That if you say you're going to pay yourself 50,000 Rand for argument's sake, you don't then pay yourself 1 million, and you don't record that extra additional cash, because then you are, one would say, you're committing some kind of fraud, you're stealing from the other person that is the business. So I think just those basic understanding that the moment you say that you've got a separate practice, this is your business, that must be the business. Money coming out must be recorded and clearly documented. If taxes need to be paid in relation to that amount, it needs to be paid. And I think one of the core things that I know there's different schools of thought in South Africa when it comes to this and SMMEs is, if you want someone to invest in your business, you essentially want this person to risk their funds, whoever it is. If it's a private equity, it's an individual, or it's any government-owned entity, you asking them, if it's a government-owned entity or related entity, if they're not risking their taxpayers' funds, they must be risking funds that belong to their pensioners or government employees through their pension, depending on who you're talking to. Private business and banks, they're also risking their shareholders' monies. So you need to be willing, in most instances, to also put in some of your money to risk, so that does create then that kind of level of trust that's required, that you understand, and they get a bit of comfort that, because if this goes down, you also lose as much as they lose. So I think that is important. And the other part that's important, it's again, I think we talked about it earlier, it's that you don't have to be the one that does your strategy or implements or comes up with a strategy for your different parts. You know overall where you want your business to go. So you need to be engaged take the process of getting funding serious enough that you understand that your strategy has to be solid. It has to take into account things that you might not have knowledge of or experience of, and it has the documents needs to be able to speak for itself. And most SMMEs, I also understand, they do struggle with ensuring that that document does speak for it does provide all the necessary information that is required for someone to trust enough to put in funds there in your business. You need to be able to say, if you as a business and you see this business being a lasting business, you want to be around in the next 10 years, 100 years, whatever the case may be, you need to say, for you to do that, what do you need to be in place? One of those, you obviously need to afford specific expenses that you must know and record. And you must do specific things if you need to market or access different markets, and what it will cost for you to do all of that. Management accounts help you at the end of the month to say, now the month is over. If you are renting space, you need to pay the rent for that. In fact, even if you're not renting space, you're working from home, there is, what's the opportunity cost of you using that space at home for this business that you could use for something else? And recording that by the end of the month shows you that maybe it has cost me 10,000 Rand to continue running, and what I need to run properly is maybe 15,000 Rand. You know already by end of the month that you've got that gap of 5,000, whichever, and you know how you've managed it this month. It helps you as the business, and it will also help anyone else that might want to partner with you, get into business with you, to understand that this is how you've done in the past months, and you keep record and you self-correct where you see that, well, this month I struggled, and then you must ask yourself, why did I struggle compared to what you had intended? And then self-correct next month. If you did really well next month, if you don't do these management accounts, you won't be able to check by end of the month that, hey, that was a great thing that I did. Maybe it was by accident. Maybe I should do that a lot more. Then you leave that up to, if you haven't done management accounts in the past 2 years, then whatever you did that other month that helped you, it might be too late now. But if you know, it helps you know what to do more of, what to stop. It's a historical data that is very important in the running of any business. I think even beyond business, in our personal lives, we need to know, if yesterday you were so great and successful and things went right, what did you do? So, and it's more so important for business that you keep that recorded. So this is what happens with the number of SMMEs that I've had the pleasure of engaging with, especially if it's a sole proprietor. You then find that if you made, I don't know, loads of cash in that 1 month, you then want to go buy a house or you want to go buy a car. And you must, what is, and the question is, because that money belongs to the person, I think as a sole proprietor, it's fine because your tax affairs are combined, you're the one person. So that won't be as big of an issue in that case. But if you've registered a different business, now you're taking from another juristic person to do what you need to do, even if you are still the same person. Now, the question would be, is that a salary to you? Are you paying yourself a dividend? If you're paying yourself a bonus, then there will be the tax implications because you must withhold tax and pay it to SARS. If you are paying yourself a dividend, again, if you're paying a dividend for a person, there's dividends withholding tax that is generally applicable, then you must pay tax again of the 20%. That must be properly recorded because otherwise, if you're doing your accounts as an example, you would know that, oh, I've been paying myself, I pay myself 10,000 Rand, and now this month I took 800,000 extra. So put into my nice car. So now that 800,000, I must record it as a loan made by the business to me. And that also provides a level of confidence to potential funders or business partners, because then they know that you are aware that the monies for the business would belong to the business. I think when I talk about potential partners, is if you want to trade with specific businesses, in particular large businesses, they also want your management accounts now and then. They might ask for them. The reason that's important, they want to see the sustainability of your business, because they don't want to say, okay, you must apply with A, B, C, and D for the next couple of months. And then next month comes, because you went and you bought yourself a very nice car, you can't afford to provide them with the goods. And so it's important to keep those records.
What is your best advice for SMME owners?
It's never too early to invite experts into your business. So you need someone that has expert knowledge to perhaps advise on your strategy. Does it make sense? Where are gaps? What do you need for you to achieve that? So whether you're starting up your business or whether you have a business that is already existing and you want to expand, whether we're talking you want to expand within South Africa or you want to expand outwards, whether you want to expand in the SADC region or the rest of Africa, you want to go beyond Africa, I think it's just come talk to us because we can help you connect you to the right people, trusted advisors everywhere that we have knowledge of the local market that you might want to get into. And if you have potential issues of fear, you have had non-compliance in the past, again, come engage us because there are ways or processes that can be followed to ensure all of that is cleared to the greater good and sustainability of your business. Something that is quite, I guess, globally, not only with SARS and big businesses, is just your use of data and understanding of your own data as an SMME. So we also, through just different service lines, do a lot of work that's related to just data cleanup and analyzing your data to say this is where you are, this is what you've done in the past. This might be the key drivers of a specific or whatever we're looking at, either cost drivers or revenue drivers, or not only within your business but within that industry as well. So that would be combining what we call business consulting and also tax. From a tax perspective, looking at that, which would be, I guess, a monthly or bi-monthly or 4 monthly cost for SMMEs, looking at how do you currently record your transactions, what are these transactions, how do you treat specific things. So I think a greater use of data analytics, that is something that we are doing a lot more for our customers. And we also see the revenue authorities in South Africa trying to use that a lot more to regulate. And even in the neighboring countries in Africa, they're also considering that as something that they want to invest in because I guess we do generally have a lot of data that we don't utilize. Let's say if anyone wants to offer services online, from a VAT perspective, so if you're providing services to South Africans outside of the country, and locally, the minimum revenue that you must have for you to register is 1 million. But if you are online, that is significantly reduced. It becomes about 50,000, where then you must be a VAT vendor. So different countries, when it comes to online services, they've got different laws that would apply, whether we're talking about VAT. And if you are the business owner as an SMME and you employ other people that are situated elsewhere, um, you might need to consider employees' tax implications because and also you must ask yourself, are you going to be paying employees tax in South Africa? Let's say you decide you want to grow your business into Europe or wherever, and you employ people there to assist you with as part of that growth. Have you created a permanent establishment in those countries, which would mean that you must be registered not only as a South African business, now you must register your business in that country because now you're operating in that country. So you need to look at how to structure your business, especially when you're growing, so that you minimize some of these compliance costs that will come by virtue of you just offering services, even if it's online, to different countries and using people that are based in other countries to look at how does this affect your business and not only now from a tax perspective. The other part, of course, is what else are you required to be registered for in that country if you are trading in specific goods or trading by offering specific services, because there might be other legal requirements that you need to be aware of so that you're not breaking international laws. So we look at all of that, and we also look at what if you are South African and you want to go into another country, do we have any trade agreements with that country? What do the trade agreements say? And we also then, over and above the trade agreements, we can look at the double tax agreements. That, okay, so if you're making specific revenue from that country, how is it going to be taxed? Is it taxed in South Africa? Must it be taxed in that country? And if you have trading partners or you are funded by an American organization or an organization that is associated to America, there then are other limitations about who you can trade with beyond what any trade agreement with South Africa and the DTA might say between you and whichever market you want to get into. So something that some SMMEs that in fact might have, so even if you're not funded by an American entity, if you are trading with an entity that might be funded by an American entity, you could find yourself, you're just expanding your trade, you want to get into a different country, and then one of your biggest customers could come and say, no, well, I can't trade with you anymore because you have a customer that is from this country, and I can't trade with that country because of my financial links to the American government in one way or the other, or to the American economy in one way or the other, which would be regulated by American laws. So when we're looking at growth and expanding, we then take into account all of those different elements. If for whatever reason we within GT we don't have specific expertise that could help guide you on how to deal with a specific issue, then we do bring in some of the reputable firms, which happens a lot more to be the legal firms, where we can say there is this international interpretation issue that we need assistance with, and then that also does help. That would help. And because of the long-standing relationships with those people, you definitely will get a far better rate than an SMME that would want to enter into to get similar advice. And even big organizations get into trouble with that because there's so many regulations about that control the move of funds that if you forget to declare in a specific, you're going to get significant penalties that if you're a small business would drown you. So now you have an option, you pay this penalty, or yes, you're wanted if you because you broke specific rules. You know, one of the basic things that I think SMMEs it becomes a block, especially when you're looking for funding to grow. Very few SMMEs, I think in particular in South Africa, you also see by the poor take up of that loan option, there are other issues when the government was saying to help SMMEs or to help businesses during this time, we are going to make facilities available so that you can have access to funding. Most SMMEs do not maintain financial records. And that is, so I think that's just the most basic thing that and it doesn't have to be in a fancy format where you must apply IFRS, so you must then look at just on a day-to-day, how much money have you made, how much money have you spent, what were you spending it on. I think if a lot of SMMEs in South Africa complied with that basic rule of if you want to grow, you need to obviously set specific targets for yourself. And if you want to talk to someone about funding, you should be able to say, this is what I have. Maybe they might want it in a different format. And then you can talk about what format then should it be in. But you should always have at the tip of your hands your financial records as latest or as the last month. When the month ends, you must know where you stand. So I would say that is definitely the basic one. Then I think the other one is just not perhaps waiting up until you don't have to be the one that does everything in your business. And now I'm not only talking about access to financial assistance or strategic advisory, anything that you want to do. You want to do marketing, you don't have to employ that person, or you don't have to be the one that does the marketing yourself. You can look at different options of where, I think outsourcing where you can. And there's then the added benefit now also you can outsource. Not your outsourcing capability is not only limited in South Africa. You can engage people elsewhere if whatever you require doesn't need the person to be physically present. Obviously, then that would come with again. There you need to then be careful. Are you employing this person? Should you raise them in South Africa? Should there be VAT implications whenever you're paying this person? Is there some kind of benefit? But I think it's just those I would say are the two things that I think if people looked at it differently, it would help them to get where they would like to go in terms of their strategy.
Great advice. Thanks so much, Kanisa. That was Kanisa Ngandu from Grant Thornton.